Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something huge, really one of the biggest betrayals in modern sports history. The Russian state-sponsored doping program.
It's a complex story.
Absolutely. And we've been digging into the sources, especially those really detailed independent commission reports, the ones WADA commission.
Yes, the IC reports are key here.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is to really get under the hood, understand how this whole system worked, the methods, who the key players were.
And the bigger picture, right? What it means when cheating becomes state policy.
Exactly. This deep dive, it's about cutting through the noise to see how badly sports governance got compromised here.
And it's important to set the scene a bit. I mean, doping itself, sadly, isn't new.
No, definitely not.
You can go way back, right? Thomas Hicks at the 1904 Olympics with strychnine, or, much more tragically, the Danish cyclist Knut Jensen in 1960. That was a real shock.
Right, those were markers along the way.
But the Russian situation, what the independent commission found, that was different. The scale, the organization, the source of the cheating. It signaled something historically significant.
How so?
Well, we really hadn't seen this kind of systematic state-level program since, East Germany back in the 70s and 80s.
The GDR parallel.
Precisely. And that program was often run with direct Stasi involvement, state intelligence coordinating the fraud. The Russian findings confirmed that state-supported doping was, unfortunately, back in a big way.
That East Germany comparison really hits home, because the first IC report back in 2015, it didn't just find isolated cheating, did it? It described a whole system.
That's the core of it. It was transactional, highly organized. This wasn't just athletes finding stuff on the black market on their own. No, this was like an enterprise.
An enterprise running alongside the official sports structure.
Exactly. The source material lays it out pretty clearly. There was an exchange happening.
Yeah.
Athletes, coaches, too. They were essentially paying for two critical services.
Okay, what were they buying?
First, obviously, the performance-enhancing drugs, the PEDs themselves. But the second service was maybe even more critical.
Let me guess. Avoiding getting caught.
Bingo. They were paying for false test results, clean results. So they bought the means to cheat and the insurance policy against getting caught.
Wow. Buying immunity.
It completely undermines the whole idea of clean competition.
And to understand just how deep this went, how institutionalized it was, we need to hear from someone inside. Evgenia Petrina, the discus thrower. Her testimony was, frankly, chilling.
It really was. She was asked how many in the national team were doping.
And her answer?
She suggested most of them. The greater part of 99%.
99%, that's almost everyone.
And she said you could get absolutely anything, whatever you needed.
Just staggering.
That 99% number, it really should make everyone stop and think. But there's another detail in the source about the money side that shows the sophistication.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Petrina mentioned, quote, the shorter the period it can be detected, the more expensive the product.
Okay, so the price reflected the risk. More expensive if it clears your system faster.
Exactly. It wasn't some arbitrary price list. It was risk management built into the cost.
That points to, a pretty sophisticated operation, right? A black market that understood the science, the detection windows.
Far beyond just casual doping. It tells you there was serious knowledge coordinating the supply.
So if the athletes and coaches are the customers, who's running the store? This is where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? It moves beyond individual.
It does. It moves right into the heart of the system that was supposed to prevent this. The WADA accredited Moscow laboratory.
The official lab. And its director, Grigory Rodchenkov.
Rodchenkov, yes. He essentially put the corruption right at the center of the anti-doping system itself.
How so? What did the IC reports say about him specifically?
Well, the report confirmed he was accepting payments. The head of the Moscow lab taking money.
The guy in charge of catching cheats was taking bribes.
He held the keys to the kingdom, basically. He ran the very place meant to ensure clean sport. So his involvement compromised the entire setup from the inside out.
And Petrina's testimony highlighted his role too, didn't it? She called him the most important specialist.
She did. And why? Because, and this is a direct quote again, he knows how long, which drugs need to disappear from the body, and instructs.
So he wasn't just turning a blind eye for cash, he was actively advising them, coordinating the cheating.
He was the technical mastermind behind the deception, telling them when to use what, timing it with the testing schedules he controlled.
Okay, this is already deep, but then it goes even further, right? Beyond Rodchenkov, beyond the lab itself.
This is where it escalates from a sports scandal, however big, into something involving the state itself. State security, actually.
You mean the FSB?
Exactly, the Federal Security Bureau. The IC investigation documented FSB personnel inside the Moscow lab.
Inside the Doggo lab, what on earth were Russian intelligence agents doing there?
Well, officially, their presence was about security. But the IC report is very clear. It created a climate of intimidation for lab staff.
Intimidation. Oh.
And, crucially, it signaled direct state involvement. Later reporting, especially around the Sochi Olympics, detailed how the FSB wasn't just watching. They were actively involved.
Involved how?
Overseeing sample security, which sounds okay, but also physically helping swap tainted urine samples for clean ones through like a hidden hole in the wall.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Swapping samples?
Yeah. This is the smoking gun, really. It connects Russian state intelligence directly to the fraud. It's that echo of the East German Stasi model we talked about. State power used to cheat.
Unbelievable. So that brings us to the broader institutional failures. If the lab is compromised and the FSB is involved, what about the official sports bodies, like the Russian Athletics Federation, ARAF, or the Ministry of Sports?
Yeah, the IC looked closely at them too. They found multiple non-conforming practices by ARAF. Basically, things they were doing that clearly broke the rules.
Suggesting they knew what was going on.
It certainly indicates they were aware, yeah, and likely facilitating the whole scheme. And as for the Ministry of Sports officials, the report described their attitude as showing a lack of institutional control.
Meaning they weren't stopping it, maybe even enabling it.
That's the implication. And it included specific tactics, like deliberately delaying the notification of positive tests to international bodies like WADA or the IAF.
Why delay?
To buy time. Give the athlete a chance to get clean, or for the system to figure out a way around it before the international authorities could step in.
Just delaying tactics. Wow. Okay, but the story didn't stop within Russia, did it? The second IC report, January 2016, it went global.
It did. It blew the doors off, really. It wasn't just about Russian officials anymore. It alleged criminal misconduct by officials at the very top of world athletics.
You mean the IAAF, the International Association of Athletic Federations?
The IAAF itself. The global governing body.
So corruption right at the highest level of the sports governance.
Absolutely. And it had immediate real-world consequences. We saw IAAF officials arrested, including the former president, Lamine Diack.
Arrested? On what charges?
They were charged criminally in France. It turned out Diack and some associates were allegedly running an extortion racket.
Extortion? How?
Apparently, they were taking bribes from athletes, often athletes, who had already tested positive to cover up their doping results, basically monetizing the failure of the anti-doping system they were supposed to be running.
That's staggering. It's moved from state cheating to global organized crime within a sports federation.
It really blurred those lines. And the IAAF, faced with this, had to act. They took the unprecedented step of suspending Russia entirely from all IAAF-sanctioned competitions.
All countries suspended. That's huge.
It was a massive decision, reflecting just how catastrophic this breach of trust was.
Okay, so we've seen the system, the players, the corruption reaching the top. What about the impact on the actual results? Does the data back up this massive scale of cheating?
Oh, absolutely. The numbers paint a pretty stark picture. Statistical analysis points to Russia being the worst violator of anti-doping rules, by quite a margin.
How do we know that? What kind of data shows it?
Well, one powerful tool W uses is the Athlete Biological Passport, the ABP.
Right. That tracks biological markers over time.
Exactly. It looks for changes in blood profiles, things like that, which can indicate doping even without a positive test for a specific substance. It makes hiding doping much harder.
And what did the ABP data show for Russia?
Get this. Since WADA started tracking this data in 2010, Russian athletes accounted for 35% of all the PE-positive results found through the ABP system.
35% from one country.
More than a third of the most sophisticated doping flags raised globally. It's a huge distortion.
Okay, that's the ABP. What about just overall violations?
If you look at the total anti-doping rule violations, or ADRVs, that's the official term for any doping offense, in just 1 year, 2013, Russia had the most in the world. They accounted for 12% of all global violations that year.
12% of everything, worldwide. And we know the initial focus was track and field athletics. But was the problem limited to that?
Not at all. That's a crucial point. While athletics did have the most violations in the 2012 data, 42 ADRVs look at the other sports.
Which one stood out?
Powerlifting had 35 violations. Wrestling, 32. Weightlifting, 26. Cycling, 19. These are core Olympic sports.
So it was systemic across multiple disciplines.
Definitely. Their total for Russia in 2012 across all sports was 225 ADRVs. It wasn't just runners and jumpers.
And you mentioned the East German comparison earlier. Was there any similarity in who was being targeted within those sports?
There was. And it's another chilling parallel, particularly in athletics. The data showed violations by women were predominant.
Female athletes were focus.
It certainly appears that way, much like the East German program, which heavily targeted female athletes, often because PEDs can offer greater comparative performance gains for women. It suggests a very calculated systemic intervention.
So the ultimate question then, did it work? Did all this cheating actually translate into more medals?
According to statistical modeling, yes. The analysis suggests Russia won about 4 to 5% more medals overall at the London 2012 Olympics than you'd expect, based on their historical performance and other factors.
4 to 5% more medals. How many is that, roughly?
It translates to maybe 3 or 4 extra medals. Medals likely gained directly through this systemic deception.
So wrapping this deep dive up, what the IC uncovered wasn't just doping, it was a whole criminal structure.
Right. You had athletes paying for drugs and fake results. You had the lab director, Rodchenkov, orchestrating it.
You had the FSB providing state muscle and intimidation.
And the corruption went all the way up to the IAAF leadership, running extortion schemes. It's a story of complete systemic failure.
And the key takeaway for you listening?
I think it's about the fragility of these big institutions. How easily state influence, money, corruption, how they can fundamentally warp regulatory bodies, whether it's in sports or, frankly, anywhere else.
And it's not just a Russia problem, is it? The source material mentions issues elsewhere, too.
That's right. The source notes the IAAF also had to suspend the head of athletics, Kenya, around the same time. It shows that this kind of institutional compromise, sadly, isn't isolated. It's a wider threat to the integrity of global sports.
Which leaves us with maybe one final provocative thought for you to chew on. We know the statistical models showed Russia overperforming in London 2012, gaining those extra medals.
Okay.
And we know the cheating was widespread beyond just athletics, hitting sports like wrestling, weightlifting. The FSB clearly had the capability for nationwide cheating systems like sample swapping.
Right.
So how much of the Russian success we saw in those other sports, the ones the IC didn't specifically investigate in depth, how much of that success might also have been driven by similar undetected doping or related schemes that makes you wonder just how far the rot really spread?